The elections out in the United States of America, Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. 12 o'clock midnight overnight is when election day began for the United States of America. But let's take some introspection on what the continent, the African continent, looks like with regards to that. Coleta Wanjohi joins me now from Addis Ababa. Coleta, welcome to SABC News. Thank you for joining us. Let's start right there. The relationships between Washington and the African continent, we'll get to that. You're in Ethiopia. How has relations been with that part of the country, Africa's longest democracy, as it were?
Well, Ethiopia is closely watching the elections or the vote counting in the United States because things kind of changed in the last few months. We know that Ethiopia has about 500,000 people or citizens living in the United States. So it has a big diaspora in the US, and anything that happens in the US affects them greatly. President Trump has talked about issues to do with immigration that could easily stifle the aspect of more Ethiopians going to the US freely like they have been doing. And also the situation that happened recently where Ethiopia came into a hard time, or a situation between a hard rock and a hard time with the US during the negotiations between Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan on the construction and operation of a dam that Ethiopia is constructing on River Nile. The United States offered to be part of the observers in the talks, and several talks were held in the United States or in Washington in 2019. But much later, towards the end of last year, we saw Ethiopia refusing to go for the talks and saying that it would prefer the African Union to lead the talks instead. So there was an issue of diplomatic push and pull there. And much later, just a few days later, or a few days ago, we saw the United States pulling out funds or aid to Ethiopia, saying that Ethiopia had refused to go with what Egypt wanted, which was in terms of reducing its operation of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. So the United States reduced about $130 million that was supposed to come as aid to Ethiopia. And finally, just a few days ago, we saw what has been termed as a very careless remark by the United States president, where he said Egypt would blow up the dam that Ethiopia is constructing if Ethiopia did not go as per what Egypt wanted. And that really is what the Ethiopians are now tagging on right now, saying that Trump is not a friend of Ethiopia. And we've seen Ethiopians in diaspora passing out information to their friends and their relatives in the US to vote out President Trump.
That was my next question. Needless to say then that, as far as Ethiopians are concerned, they're hoping for Joe Biden to take victory at these elections. With regards to that, do they expect things to change if Joe Biden and the Democrats take this election?
Yes, there is hope there. There is hope because a lot of information or messages coming from other Ethiopians who are living or who are diaspora in the United States. They are telling other Ethiopians that Biden could be the change that Ethiopia is looking at. Maybe Biden would come with much more respect for Ethiopia because Biden would be a Democrat, and we saw Obama during his term also showing a lot of respect for Ethiopia as part of the continent, and so they are hoping that Biden would make a change, and Biden would stop threats and have the diplomatic kind of talk and conversation between countries, Ethiopia and the US.
Let's come back now to the continent at large. The United States already vastly underinvested in sub-Saharan Africa, a region that is, experiencing some of the fastest population growth in the world over. Where do the relations with possibly the AU or the rest of the continent stand with regards to Washington, in particular this president, and what could be a Democrat coming in if he wins the election, that is Joe Biden, of course?
Well, the African Union in itself is also watching very closely what will come out from the US votes, because a president that will show friendship to the African people is someone who will be accepted by the African Union. Well, we know in the past, in 2017, once Trump came in, he suggested to the Congress that there should be a reduction of about 35% of the aid that was coming to Africa, and that, of course, we saw some other agencies, the UN UN agencies like UNICEF complaining that the African nations that were depending on their programs then would be affected. So the African Union would be hoping that America votes in a friend who will understand that Africa needs some of this support. And also the shift, there has been a shift in the continent where the African Union is pushing for partnership and not aid, and they want a person who will look at Africa as a partner and not as someone who is needy. And we've seen Trump making careless remarks, calling countries in Africa shithole countries, others forgetting names of other countries, speaking out like Africa does not matter really. And we've had retorts from different countries about that. So the African Union would be looking at this. Of course, the US-Africa policy remains, but the issue of trade is a bit shaky because now Africa has a stronger partner in China than the United States, and now we are seeing also Russia coming in with soft power. So the AU is watching so that it can be able to have a comparison and choose a partner that will really take the African Union as a friend.
Speaking on that, I mean, with China, the relations, China, Russia and US, all of them obviously wanting interest with regards to Africa, where do you think the African Union would rather have their bread buttered? Out west in the United States? Because a lot of people saying China are taking over the world and maybe the continent should be wary about getting into business with the Chinese.
Well, the African Union is well aware of that, and we've seen the heads of state in the past few summits pushing for what we are calling now the African Continental Free Trade Area. And they say if Africa can trade more with itself, because we've got about 1.3 billion people, we've got production that can be well supported within the continent, then Africa will be able to be a standalone, strong pillar, and it will be able to talk with these other powers at a kind of a good level. Because what we are having now is we are having a lot of trade with maybe China, a lot of trade with other countries, or maybe the US and the European Union, and they're kind of dictating on what Africa should consume and how Africa should consume it in terms of quality, prices and all that. But what the African Union is saying that all partners are welcome. Doesn't matter if it's China, Russia, US, if it brings forth something that an African country feels is good, then that's okay. But Africa should be able to put itself with the ACFTA at a level where it will be talking with these countries at an eye level, and not as a situation whereby it will be looked at as a situation or as a continent that only receives and does not give anything.
Yeah, coming with the begging bowl. We've heard that one before. Now, before I let you go, Coleta, quick one. What is the mood? What is the feel on the ground, that part of the continent with regards to these elections? The people of the continent, where do they lean towards with regards to Joe Biden or Donald Trump? Who would they like to see as president of the USA?
Well, as we stand now, it's a bit easy to call it, because we know with how the US elections go, there's the electoral vote, then we have the majority vote and all that. But and we know that different countries in Africa would prefer different candidates depending on how they were treated by either President Trump or Obama in the past. But what is for sure, the consensual feeling around the continent is respect for the continent. It doesn't matter whatever bilateral deals a country has with the US. Respect for the continent is utmost, it's tantamount. And the fact that Africa needs a partner who will be able to understand that Africa is also moving at a very fast pace, and whatever trade deals or whatever deals are made should be able to have a win-win situation, and Africa should not be put down.
Coleta Wanjohi speaking to us from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. That's our SABC News correspondent. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. We'll touch base with you a bit later on.